first 8 seasons in Houston, Harden had individually become a perennial all-star and league MVP. But after multiple years of playoff disappointment, his discontent in Houston began to show. Harden requested a trade from the Rockets while holding out a training camp. He was fined for violating COVID-19 protocols after video surfaced of him socializing maskless in a club. Harden began the regular season with the Rockets, but the team started 3-6, and Harden scored 20 or less in each of his last 4 games in Houston. 7 weeks ago today, the news came that Harden was headed to the Brooklyn Nets, which had been one of his preferred trade destinations. Harden played his first game with the Nets on January 16th. Now, Harden is leading the NBA in assists and playing at an MVP level. The Nets have the best record in the Eastern Conference since acquiring the Beard. We bring in the one and only Mike Wilbon in the house. Mike Wilbon, we know how this all came about. What happened with James Harden in Houston? Came into camp, skipped training camp, came into the season out of shape. We know he could drop 20 in his sleep, let alone 40, and he was averaging like 17 a game. Thinking back to those times while he was in Houston before he got traded to the Brooklyn Nets, what did you make of it then? What do you make of it now?
I don't know that it's changed, Stephen A. There's a word we used to use all the time, cheesy. That's what it was. It was less than. It was less than the James Harden that we had seen take Houston deep into the playoffs.
Is the audio
less
gonna
than
be
the
better
James
like this?
Harden who had been an MVP. It was just cheesy all the way around, especially now the way he pops up the other side in Brooklyn being, let's face it, either 1 or 2 on everybody's MVP list where it sits now.
Cheesy, I don't know how we look at that word in the year 2021, Mike Wilbon. I don't understand why you would use that word cheesy as extensive as your vocabulary is, but I'll let it go. Having said all of that, where do you have him right now when we talk about James Harden as an MVP? Where is he on your list at this particular moment in time, Wilbon?
By the way, Stephen, you know what cheesy is? When you frown and scrunch your face all up and say, no, man, I know this dude is better than that. That's cheesy. I have him too. But he's gaining on LeBron, it seems like, every day. And I've had LeBron 1 the whole season. But James Harden is right there, the way he has just changed his game to fit exactly what Brooklyn needs on a nightly basis, particularly becoming the point guard. It's stunning and impressive every single game he walks on the floor.
You have James Harden, too. You have him inching up on LeBron James. I didn't hear the name Joel Embiid in that. We'll get to that a little bit later. We've got some stuff to talk about. Okay, third, that's where you're going? Excuse me, we'll talk about that later. In the last 12 games or so, we've watched James Harden. We've watched what he's done. Look at him warming up right there, right now. This is the James Harden. You're looking at them right now. In the last 12 games, the Nets are 9-3, which included an 8-game win streak. Meanwhile, the Rockets have lost 12 straight and have been the lowest scoring team over that stretch. James Harden talked with our very own Malika Andrews about his return to Houston tonight.
When you go back to Houston, there are going to be thousands of fans there. How do you expect or maybe hope to be received?
I hope I'm received with love. The love and the appreciation that I've given to that city and that I still give to that city. Hoping that the favor can be returned. Nothing but love and appreciation. It'll continue to be that way because they've given me the opportunity those 8 years to grow in this league as a leader that I am today. So I'm excited for it.
We welcome in a wonderful reporter who talked to James Harden, the one and only Malika Andrews. Malika, now that there's been some distance from the time he departed from Houston to his time in Brooklyn right now, how does he feel at this particular moment in time about how things unfolded to start off the season?
Well, it's a balance, Stephen A., when James Harden is looking back to how things ended in Houston, because on the one hand, he told me that there are some things that he just wished had gone a little bit differently, smoothly. He said he wished that things had been a little bit more smooth in his transition out of Houston. But at the same time, he said that he wouldn't necessarily do anything differently. He said it was very, very challenging to balance the emotions that he had about the city, the connection he felt with the fans, with also feeling like their window as a franchise had closed for them to be contending for a championship. And so it's a little bit of back and forth with him. He said that he looks around and sees what other stars in other sports in Houston have and how they have been able to exit. He says he wished that it could have gone a little bit more like that. But all in all, he is happy with his decision, and he's happy that he landed in Brooklyn and wishes the franchise nothing but the best.
A lot of folks have speculated and they've asked James Harden about what kind of reaction he expects from the fans in Houston. I'm interested in knowing what expectation does exist on the part of his teammates. What do they expect from the fans in Houston tonight?
Well, Steve Nash said that he hopes and thinks that the reaction is going to be positive. So he's a little bit more of an optimist. But Kyrie Irving said that he's not going to be tolerating any trash talking in James Harden's direction. He said that they're going to rally around him. They know that fans, it can be a little bit tough. It's an interesting situation here in Houston. It's rare in a pandemic season, but Houston actually has 4,500 fans here in Toyota Center to be welcoming James Harden back. And DeAndre Jordan said that, honestly, he expects a little bit of booze. He expects a little bit of jeering coming in James Harden's way, but they're also going to rally around him. That's their job as a team, he said, and so they're expecting a little bit of a mixed bag of reactions.
Malika Andrews, reporter from Houston tonight. Thank you as always.
Thanks, Stephen A.
Still ahead.
Kevin and Elle back with you on SportsCenter. Kev, we're about 40 minutes away. Nets Rockets, the homecoming for James Harden. He's back in Houston for the first time since forcing a trade to Brooklyn. Says he is hopeful that he will have a nice response. There's expected to be about 3,500 people in attendance at the game.
Have you ever done the chair?
I've never done that.
That's the chair. That's that little.
I've never.
Oh, that's killer.
Well, I'm sure, but you work out, and that's not really anything that I just like to lift wings into my mouth. Let's take a look at the Eastern Conference standings right now. You got the Sixers, Nets, Bucks. They're separated by 2 games at the top of the Eastern Conference, and there's a little gap starting to form between them and the rest of the pack. If you add the Celtics to this group, there's only 4 teams above 500 in the East. Here goes the left coasters. There's 10 teams above 500 in the Western Conference, but enough about that. Stephen A. is joining us because before we get tip-off, we're going to get SportsCenter with Stephen A. here at the top of the hour on ESPN, but I want to stay there. As I mentioned, Sixers, Nets, and Bucks, Stephen A., within 2 of each other. So I'm going to make a declarative statement. Basically, they're all created equal, and the conference is up for grabs, right?
Hell no, they ain't. They ain't created equal. Don't think for one second that the Milwaukee Bucks are on the same level as the Brooklyn Nets or the Philadelphia 76ers for that matter. Even though I'd put Philadelphia closer to the Brooklyn Nets than the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks have a lot to prove. Last couple of years, they really bowed out ungracefully after being up 2-0 to Toronto and folding 4 straight in the conference finals. Last year, getting bumped by Miami the way that they did in the second round in 5 games. They got some things to prove. It's great that they kept the Greek Freak, but Middleton and others need to step up, and Drew Holiday's going to have to validate the fact that he's arrived there for a productive reason. In the case of the Philadelphia 76ers, obviously the pickup of Seth Curry and the play of Tobias Harris, who seems to have his best years whenever he's playing for Doc Rivers, definitely has something to do with it. And Joel Embiid is a monster. He's a top 2 candidate for league MVP right now. Ben Simmons is a defensive player of the year as far as I'm concerned, but he's got to show that he can hit perimeter shots. Why does that matter? Because when you're going against the Brooklyn Nets, you had damn well better be able to shoot some perimeter shots, because when KD returns, and we're assuming he's going to return, although he's missed 17 games this year, you're talking about Kevin Durant with James Harden, with Kyrie Irving being the showstopper and the box office attraction that he is. These brothers could put up points in bunches in the blink of an eye. They will take you out. They will smoke you. They will annihilate you. And you're going to have to be able to stop them, which ain't going to happen, which means you're going to have to be able to outscore them, which I can't see happening. So no, all things are not created equal, to answer your question. It's the Brooklyn Nets, and it's everybody else.
Okay. Nagani's boring a hole into your camera. He wanted to make sure that you at least mentioned that the Sixers are hanging in there. More from Stephen A. coming up in just a few minutes, right here, 7 p.m. Eastern on SportsCenter. He's going to get you set for a huge night in the NBA, in particular down in Houston, where James Harden is making his return officially as a Brooklyn Net. Thanks, Stephen A.
To the NFL, the Raiders.